Hi everyone, in today's episode we'll be looking at Sky Odyssey, a flight sim for the PS2. Sky Odyssey is a flying sim and has a pretty unique distribution history. It came to North America in November of 2000, about a month after the PS2 was released here, and it was published by Activision. But it was made for Sony by a Japanese developer, and I was surprised to find out that it wasn't released there until 2001. That makes it one of the few games to be developed in Japan, but released in North America first. Also, while Activision was the game's North American publisher, Sony published it as a first-party game everywhere else. It's the same thing that happened to the 99-cent gem in our first episode, Finny the Fish. This won't be the last time you see that happen in this series, and it makes me wonder if there's a correlation between first-party games that get sent to third-party publishers and their likelihood of success. It's almost like they were doomed to become forgotten classics. The game itself has several modes to choose from, but we're only going to look at the adventure mode. Your objective is to find your way to the Tower of Maximus, and in order to do that you need to fly to different areas and recover pieces of a map. Each waypoint you fly to is a mission. The difficulty comes in the form of moderately realistic flight physics, together with difficult terrain and obstacles. The crash physics, on the other hand, are just hilarious. Most of the missions have you flying through canyons, but there are a few special missions to add some variety. The cover depicts one where your plane has a fuel leak, so you have to fly low and match your speed to a moving train so you can refuel from it. That might sound absurd, but similar things really did happen, like here where you see a plane refueling from a truck while it's trying to break an endurance record, so it's obvious that they took inspiration from real events. The rest of the missions are pretty mundane, like supply drops and rescuing the crew of a hot air balloon. The bulk of the missions involve flying through caves and canyons. They get progressively more difficult, but I actually find most of them relaxing. There's a weird soothing quality about this game, and it really feels like you're making a journey somewhere and enjoying the scenery as it goes by. But as much as I hate to sound like an Xbox gamer, I have to admit that after a while I was getting bored and hoping there would be a mission that would let me shoot something. Most of the aircraft are modeled after combat aircraft from World War II, so I thought this was inevitable, but it never happens. There's a mission where you land on an aircraft carrier, and I started to wonder if the carrier was also based on a real ship too. As it turns out, it's pretty easy to narrow it down, because there's a big clue. The bridge is on the port side. Aircraft carriers normally have their bridge on the starboard side, because pilots veer to the left in an emergency. Only two aircraft carriers have ever had their bridge on the port side, the Akagi and the Hiryu. Both were Japanese, both took part in the attack on Pearl Harbor, and both were sunk by the US Navy during the Battle of Midway. They never named the carrier, but I think it resembles the Hiryu much more, and I can imagine why a Japanese game developer wouldn't want to show off that they modeled their aircraft carrier after one that participated in the attack on Pearl Harbor, especially if we assume that they were focusing on the US market since they released it here first. The aircraft are customizable, and it almost feels like you're leveling up an RPG character's abilities. The music is also great, and it really helps to set the mood. It feels like you're going through some uncharted territory where you're going to have to improvise and figure things out by yourself. Does the music sound familiar to you? Well, guess what? It's none other than Ko Otani, the same composer who would later create a similar soundtrack for Shadow of the Colossus. One of the most fascinating parts happens when you approach the final goal, the Tower of Maximus. You fly through the obstacles and suddenly you enter a black abyss. It's very unnerving, and suddenly out of the blue the Tower of Maximus appears. I had to swerve to avoid it. It catches you completely off guard, and it really is a special moment in the game. Yeah, so sorry for spoiling that for you. Overall, this is a great game. The missions can be a little repetitive, and I'll admit, the graphics weren't stunning back then, and they haven't gotten any better since. But if you were a fan of peaceful flight sims like Pilot Wings, then you should really give this game a chance. And now, let's look at a game that isn't a 99-cent gem. What do you think of when you see the LJN logo? I'm sure that most of you watching this know about their reputation for making terrible games, especially licensed games. Maybe you even got burned after buying a bad game they created that was based off your favorite film. But would you believe that for me personally, I actually have very fond memories of LJN? It wasn't until now that I discovered that LJN had such a terrible reputation. I didn't have a lot of games when I was growing up, so I only had one game released by LJN, and it just so happened to be a good one. But it's not just good. What if I told you that this game is so outstanding that it would easily make my list of top 10 NES games? What if I told you that the LJN game I'm describing is actually a licensed game, and I already warned you that they cornered the market on screwing that up? What if I told you that this game has incredible graphics for its time, and the music is even better? I consider it to be the soundtrack to my childhood memories of the NES. Well then, the game I'd be describing to you would be Thrilla Surfari. Take a skateboarding-obsessed gorilla, add in a shot of early 90s surfer culture, and you've got yourself a forgotten video game mascot. The game begins with a shaman kidnapping Thrilla's girl, and any skateboarding gorilla can tell you that using black magic to steal someone's lady is a total bro code violation. The rest is a typical video game quest where you go from level to level chasing down this evil shaman. The game looks really good for an NES title. Two things really stand out to me. The backgrounds are detailed and colorful, and the game moves at a very quick pace. That's very uncharacteristic of what you would expect to see on the NES. It actually looks like the type of game you would expect to see on the TurboGrafx-16, but I don't know if you guys see that too, maybe it's just me. Because the pace of the game is so quick, the challenge increases as the levels get more intricate. It does have a few cheap deaths that can only be avoided through trial and error, but generally the difficulty increases steadily, and I never felt like the game was being unfair all of a sudden. The levels are simple, and you just need to find the exit to the next stage. You're free to explore the level, so it's nice that you're able to backtrack if you miss something. The game also throws you a curveball here and there to mix things up. The boss battles are some of the best parts. You switch from an isometric perspective to a 2D plane, and you defeat the enemies by throwing coconut grenades at them. One thing that I really love is how the scenery changes. The game is supposed to take place in Africa, and rather than just use that as a convenient excuse to explain why you play as a gorilla instead of, say, a West Coast surfer dude, I like that they actually incorporate various landscapes. Some of them look really nice. You might have noticed that there are also coconuts to collect in the levels. These are used when you complete the level to try to get extra lives. There's a weird level where the sand is blue, disembodied purple elephant heads attack you, and the coconuts do really strange stuff. At the end of the level, it's revealed that it was all an illusion. I remember as a kid I always thought the game was glitching out or just badly programmed. I couldn't imagine that the developers would trick the player like that. Then there's the music, which is incredibly good. I don't even have to elaborate, just listen. I don't know why this game doesn't get more attention in the retro gaming community. I do have two theories though. First of all, it was released in 1992, which was the year after the Super NES was released, so it's understandable that it didn't get a lot of attention. But even more importantly, it's a sequel. Its full title is actually TNC Surf Designs 2 Thrilla Surfari. I think it might have been overshadowed by the stigma associated with the first game, which was absolutely terrible, and I consider it to be the flagship of how broken and unplayable LJN games can be. For anyone who wants to know, Thrilla does actually appear in the first game. If you played the first game, you'd be forgiven for avoiding its sequel. I really can't think of another sequel that had such a massive leap in quality over its predecessor. I know there are going to be critics who are skeptical of the praise I gave to this game, but for those who don't agree with me, let me advise you that this game includes a gorilla riding a shark, so therefore your argument is invalid. But really, you need to give this game a shot. You can find the cartridge for around $10, and now is the best time to buy because it's starting to pick up in value. So listen guys, let's keep this one to ourselves for a little while. We don't want the price to skyrocket just yet. So please, don't go out and start making videos about it or... Oh wait, sorry, my bad. Well, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.